So welcome everybody if you're here on
Excellent
our Zoom
forever.
link or if you're here on our Facebook Live. My name is Carolyn Dubé. I'm the Executive Director at Fertility Matters Canada, and we are here live tonight with my new-ish good friend, Vidya, who is not only a patient, a fertility patient, but also a member of our FMC Patient Advisory Council. And Vidya, I met Vidya this winter, and she's been working to get all of our Figuring Out Fertility Facebook Live series. So she's been working on that at least a year. So any of these expert series that you see on our Facebook page, Vidya's been working behind the scenes to set those up, work with the professionals, to get them lined up to bring you all this amazing information. And I am thrilled that she's here with us tonight because we're putting her in front of the camera to talk about her personal fertility journey. So Vidya, thank you for being here.
No problem.
So
love it. It's nice to be in front of the camera, be the subject for a change, I guess.
So nice. I'm really excited actually because we've never gotten deep into your fertility journey, the two of us. So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more. So why don't you tell us a little bit, take us back to how you got diagnosed, how you figured this out, and kind of what your fertility journey looked like.
Sure. Well, it's like, I know we're trying to be concise. It's hard to distill, I guess, 7 years of trying to have babies into a minute, but I guess the Coles Notes is in 2008, or sorry, was it? Yeah, 2008, my husband and I got married, and 2 years later, we decided that it was time to have the babies, and it just didn't, like everyone watching this right now, it just didn't happen right away, unfortunately. So we, we tried and tried. Then I'm incredibly type A and super impatient. So we moved to like just ovulation sticks and that kind of thing really quickly. And those weren't really working. They weren't giving me the information they're supposed to give me. And it was just very keen. So we escalated quickly to like one of those like more expensive monitors that like, I don't even remember what it's called. It was so long ago and it's probably way more advanced now. But then we got pregnant on our first time with that like fancy expensive monitor.
Wow.
So we were thrilled. We had no information on miscarriages. We were one of the first of our friends to get pregnant. So we like didn't really even know that you were supposed to wait 3 months or whatever before you tell people. And we called my parents right away and were so excited. And literally like 3 or 4 days later, we realized we were having a miscarriage. It was a chemical pregnancy. So that was very devastating and kind of embarrassing because we just didn't even know it was a possibility really, which, you should, it's funny now looking back that it didn't even occur to us. But so after that, we
I don't think it probably would occur to a lot of people, especially
happening again. Yeah, exactly. And we didn't know anyone that had had a miscarriage. Like it was like Googling it, I was like, is a chemical pregnancy a miscarriage? Like, can I even classify it this way? And you can, for everyone watching. It is devastating whether you're pregnant for an hour or pregnant for 9 months. Losing a pregnancy is heartbreaking. Your ideas of what your family's going to be are dashed in an instant. So that was really difficult. My husband was great through it. We kept trying. And then finally I was like, I'm too impatient for this. I'm going to my gynecologist. I'm lying about the time we've been trying for, and we are progressing this. So, he was really great. I didn't have to lie. about how long we'd been trying. He got me in right away. And sure enough, by the time we actually got to the clinic, I was pregnant again. So, this time I felt more reassured because we were being monitored with the clinic. They put me on progesterone. I was getting ultrasounds regularly, like everything looked positive, and everything we had read after the first miscarriage was that it's very normal to have a miscarriage and go on to have perfectly healthy pregnancies. So that was the train we were on. And of course, we got around to our 6-week ultrasound and there was no heartbeat. So again, we were in that situation of having our hopes dashed. So that sucked. Then we stayed with the clinic. As soon as we could get back to trying again, we did. And nothing happened on our first unmedicated cycle that was with cycle monitoring. That's pretty normal. And then we moved on to Clomid, which was at the time the gateway drug to fertility, but I think it's a different drug right now. And we got pregnant again on our first cycle with Clomid. And spoiler alert, we have a 6-year-old, 7-year-old boy almost now, but that was like, I know it seems silly to complain about a pregnancy, but like it was so hard after facing 2 miscarriages to like even believe that we were going to have a baby. They liken or I liken what people in infertility go through to like PTSD, and it's not to make light of the situation. It's just that everything is a trigger. Like if I was at the time where you should be feeling kicks and I wasn't feeling kicks, and every day I was convinced that I was going to miscarry again. Even after an ultrasound, I would feel like good for about an hour, and then I would be convinced that like it was already gone. So it was a really like difficult pregnancy in that regard. I think I didn't really feel like I was gonna have a baby or that I was even still pregnant until we were at 22 weeks and we're feeling like regular kicks. So then I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna have I think we might actually have a baby out of this, like 24 weeks, like viability. We like celebrated. And just every day. And then of course it can't just be like a normal healthy full-term pregnancy. We my water ended up breaking at 31 weeks. And yeah, it was really scary. We went to the hospital and I was on bed rest for 4 days, and they said, we have to deliver him. He's compromised. So we had an unideal C-section, which, I actually didn't mind the whole C-section thing. But we had a C-section. He was in the NICU for a month before we got to take him home. I wasn't even able to hold him for, I think it was like a week we weren't able to hold him for. So That was not ideal either. But we have him. He's healthy. He's wonderful. He's smart and funny, and we're so grateful. But literally the day we had him, I bumped into my doctor and was like, how do we go about making number 2? Of course. It took 2 years to make number 1, and I don't want to go through that again. So let's get the support we need. And as soon as we're allowed to start trying again, then we can start trying again. So of course, because of the C-section we had, we weren't allowed to start trying for an extra long period of time because they were cutting everywhere and whatever. But once we were allowed to start trying, we did. We went straight to the clinic right away because we knew the formula now. It took Clomid and then it would work and we would be fine. But it didn't happen. We did like 6 straight rounds of Clomid, convinced that, it was going to happen the same way, and it didn't. We moved on to IUIs. We did 6 or 7 of those, again, convinced, like, it was just like us and our doctors were in this state of disbelief that nothing was working. Like we had a healthy baby, and why weren't we having another healthy baby? So yeah, fast forward, we've been through 3 rounds of IVF. We've transferred 11 embryos, and we just never got that second baby. And now we're here. We are done our journey. It was a very difficult decision to end and not escalate, but we had spent 5 straight years being subpar parents to my son, and I just didn't want to be distracted anymore by things that were making me unhappy. So we're done, and we didn't get the family we wanted, but we have a great family, so we're fine. Like, we're happy and we're peaceful and we're good, but it is what it is.
Of course. And it's amazing how many times we hear this story, you know. There's so many people who will watch this and who we talk to on a regular basis, who you now talk to as part of our organization to volunteer with us, who haven't gotten to the first stage of, you know, they're just starting their fertility journey, or they've been kind of in the trenches. And you've now been like, you've gone from sort of mild treatment right through and had the whole kit and caboodle of treatment all the way up to IVF. And it doesn't, you know, negate the importance. You know, yes, you have a child, but most people have an idea of what they'd like their family to look like. And that doesn't, you know, make your dream of having a bigger family any less important than the dream of someone having a family at all. So thank you for mentioning that, because I think sometimes we hear it and we see it that, you know, people mean well. They don't mean to be hurtful in their comments, but a lot of times, I mean, we heard it. So we had to do IVF for the first child and then the second time. And after our first child was born, lots of people said, well, at least you have a child.
At least you have
like,
one.
can't you be happy? Like, be happy. You should be happy. Have your family, move on. But there's this thing in your gut, and you can't describe it. It's a need or a want or I don't even know actually how to describe it now that I'm thinking about it.
It's a dream.
A dream.
Like, no one wants to give up on their dreams, right? Like, I think that at first, when we were in the middle of it, the hardest thing to hear was people dismissing our dream by saying, well, at least you have one. Be grateful for what you have. Like, you know, like, we went through so much to have that one. And even if you didn't go through all of that, of course you're grateful to have your children. And I think that people who go through infertility to have their kids are even like, just like, you know, a smidgen more grateful, because they've faced the reality of like what your life would be like if you didn't have that. And that's that's scary. So, you know, like that was the most common phrase we heard throughout everything. And like you said, people mean well, and unless you've been through it, you don't really know. And if you're still trying for your first, of course you think that people should be grateful to have their one, and we are. So I guess my message to everyone who wants to say at least you have one is that, yeah, we're super lucky to have that one, like, so lucky. But it doesn't mean that we can't be heartbroken over the ones we don't have, or that we're still trying for, or that we're failing at making.
Absolutely. That's really, and you know, there's a lot of emotion that goes along with that. And I think that it's so important to talk about, because sometimes we do talk more about sort of primary infertility and that piece. And it is very important, because secondary infertility, you know, lots of people have babies, a first baby, no problem. And then all of a sudden move on to have secondary infertility and need to move on to fertility treatment. It is common. And we need to recognize that and make sure that those people know that there is support and that it is normal. These things can happen, and you need to figure out where to find the information and resources to help you kind of move through the journey. So tell me, people, Vidya. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second.
No,
I
it's
think
okay.
that people in the infertility community, like, you know, there's a natural quietness to it. Like, some people are very vocal about what they go through, which is great. And I highly encourage, because it's so surprising to know how many other people go through it as well, and you're not alone. But especially amongst people with secondary infertility, you're like extra silenced, because like you don't want to seem ungrateful for what you have. And it is such a shock, but it is so common. Like, you know, a lot of people plan for their first child, but they're not planning necessarily for like the second or third child. So like age happens, like life changes happen, things happen to delay. And you find yourself in this situation where you're like, wait, but I didn't have a problem with my first. And it's so surprising. And everybody in this community who can't just have a baby needs support regardless of where you're at in your journey. Like, I would say that I'm done in my journey and like I still need a level of support.
Absolutely.
So
yes. So tell me, speaking about support, so
yeah.
I guess there's a couple of stages here for you. Where did you find support, or did you even look for support when you first got diagnosed and figured you needed to use, you know, for some sort of assisted reproductive technology to help you build your family? And then did that change the level of support? Did it change what you needed for support change as you moved into secondary infertility, and now as you're living, you know, without the family that you had hoped for?
That's a great question. In terms of support, you know, we were really quiet our first time around, but I opened up to like good friends about our miscarriages and things like that. And our friends were as supportive as they could be without having experienced the same thing. So in that bubble, I really found my support in like my husband, who was experiencing it with me. But we didn't really have we didn't really have anyone in our lives that could relate. So by the time we had Everett and, by the time we had my son, we, you know, everyone kind of assumed we'd healed. And then when we were going through it again, it was like, we almost felt like we were being a burden or a wet blanket again, after like having become all better. So, but what I did find wonderful was, I live in a very small town. I used to live in a very urban city, and we moved in the middle of our fertility journey to a very small town, and they have like a satellite office there. And people in small towns just talk and are friendlier than when you're in like a big urban city. So the culture of waiting for an ultrasound was so drastically different. And I became friends with a couple of people who were going through the same thing at the same time that we were. So two of my very closest friends today are people who, one girl had her first IVF cycle like a day or two before my first IVF cycle, and another girl in like our little trio of girls was literally the appointment right after me, to have our first egg retrieval. So I was so fortunate to have found them and been able to rely on them throughout. And then closer to the end of our journey, when I was kind of wrapping up, I actually found a lot of healing and support in my fertility doctor, which I wasn't expecting. I had been through like 3 or 4 fertility doctors. Wow. And the last one and I really like clicked. And I think he really got the whole, like, he was able to empathize and put himself in my shoes of recognizing, like, if it's not going to be a baby at the end of this, I need answers and I need peace. So he really played that counselor role. And the naturopath that I had at the end there also played that counselor role. And like, that naturopath and I are great friends today. So they like, it's like specific people serve specific purposes at specific times. And I think that when you find those good people who really get what you've been through, you hang on to them in a really tight grasp.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, because you became part of this organization while I wasn't in my role. I was on a leave. And so how
did I find Fertility Matters?
How did you find out Fertility Matters, and why did you want to get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was actually nearing the end of my journey. I really wish I had discovered it earlier, because the resources and the education piece that I had been missing my entire journey was here the whole time, and I just didn't know. So when I was nearing the end of my journey, I stumbled upon one of the Facebook Lives that had been done during CIAW, and it wasn't even a topic that related to what I needed. Like, it was just a different topic, and my doctor was on it, and I was like, oh, what's he talking about? And I was like trying to see if he's as smart as I thought he was. And he is.
And he is.
He is. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, what a great resource to have a topic in mind and be able to like search and find a video on it. And that's why, like, when I started, I basically contacted Fertility Matters after seeing one video and was like, how can I help? Because I knew, like, our journey lasted years longer than it needed to because I didn't have the information I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a doctor that was willing to sit there for an hour and answer every question I had and collaborate with me on the right path for myself. And so I felt like I was in the dark for so long, and I got that at the end of my journey, and I feel like everybody deserves that. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be a part of like the Figuring Out Fertility series. If you look at the topics that we talk about, you'll see a lot of topics that I'm personally interested in, but that are also really interesting to the diverse range of fertility patients out there, to get the answers you need, because like those chat groups are not where you're going to get reliable information.
It's true. You know, there's a space for these support groups and to collect and to come together as individuals, to create a community where you can lean on each other. But there's a very good place for getting information that's vetted from experts and people who work in the fertility industry. And that's exactly what Fertility Matters does. We use Canadian fertility experts to educate the public, to educate patients so that they can make informed decisions about their fertility or reproductive health. Because sometimes, you know, you go into these sessions with a doctor and it's so much information. And if you are not familiar with very much, it's, number one, it's scary to hear you'll never have a baby without my help. You know, when I heard those words, I heard nothing else. Nothing else that came out of a doctor's mouth went into my ears. And so if we can provide that resource for patients so that they feel more empowered to have a conversation with a doctor, to make decisions when they need to make tougher decisions. You know, that's what we're here for. And we're thankful for you to be able to help us get that information to patients. And it's even actually more so because I didn't know that part of your story about the seeing your doctor on the Figuring Out Fertility series.
I don't think he knows that story. Don't tell him.
I won't.
I don't want it to go to his head.
Yeah, you might watch the replay, so we will keep it a secret. I won't say a word.
Don't let it go to your head, Dr. Blank.
Yeah. He'll like to know that. So tell me, I guess, in closing, what do you want patients to know? If you are, now that you're on the other side of your journey, you know, if you were starting this out, what would you tell someone was in your position, you know, 10 years ago or whatever, however long it's been?
That's, God, I would have so much to say. I would probably make it shorter than this.
That's okay.
I would probably say, first of all, like, there is such a value in clicking with the professionals that you work with, because you can get a lot further faster. Like, you can't overcome like what your body will or will not do, but you can, if you are able to build that relationship where you're completely honest with what you want and what you need, and they're willing to respond to that and meet those needs, then you're going to have a much more positive experience. So this is speaking from someone who went through 3 REs before my final RE, when I could finally say, like, okay, I think I'm done. Like, it took having the right partner in it, like, not like your spouse obviously, but like another professional partner in it, to be able to like find peace. And that's another piece as well, is like, you know, we all want babies. Like everybody who's watching this right now is looking to have a baby, or was trying to have a baby and is still connected to the community, or whatever your situation is. But as much as we want babies, we also want answers, and we want to feel like okay at the end of our journey, regardless of the outcome. So it's really important to remember that like you have to stay true to yourself. You have to be honest with yourself about where your lines and boundaries are, and it's okay to move those goalposts. But there's like we say to, whenever my son asks for a sibling, we always say to him, you know, you can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need. And I truly believe that, like, we did not get what we wanted. Like, we wanted to have a family with 2 or 3 kids. That's not happening. But, you know, we can walk away from it with tears in our eyes, but still feeling like we did everything we could and we're at peace with the decisions we made.
Of course. And at the end of the day, I'm sure knowing with that peace comes some, I don't know if I wouldn't say closure, to be honest. I don't think that that's the appropriate word, but you know, when you can walk away, you can feel like, okay, we did everything we could that was in our power to make this happen. And there's a satisfaction, or maybe peace is just the word. It's just the ability to know that you did everything, and this is where the cards are lying, and and that's okay.
It's like all of fertility, like treatments and like going through this, it's all trade-offs. You're right. You're like, what am I willing to put into this to get that outcome? And eventually you're so burnt out, or you're just not willing to trade off anymore. So for us, it came to like, I can't put our family through this anymore. Like, I can't not be there for my son in the mornings, or even in the evenings, because I was driving like 2.5 hours to the city to get treatment, and I'd be gone the whole day. So, I became like, it's not worth it anymore for me. And that line is different for everyone. And if we didn't have my son, we would have taken it years and years further down the road. We would have tried a lot more, but for us, it was the end, and it felt like the end. Like, people, I always wondered, like, how do you know when to stop? Like, that was like, to me, that in the last 1.5 years of our treatments, I was like, I just want to stop, but it just never feels like I can stop. Right. And then finally it did just feel like the right time to put it to rest. And we knew we could go back to it if we wanted to. Yeah. But like now, a year and a half later, and we don't really want to.
Yeah. Your life becomes what it is, and you can sort of, you know, say, okay, this is okay, and we can do this, and we have each other. And we
got a dog.
Well, so, you know, so there's that.
Not the same thing, but like kind of like, you know, meeting, when you talk about meeting someone halfway, like a dog is halfway.
That is halfway. You need to take that dog away with you for a weekend, or find it a sitter. Yeah. So Vidya, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Thank you for being vulnerable. I know it's not always easy to, you know, talk about experiences, but it's really important for us to share our stories so that the people who we're connecting with can see that they're not alone, and these things are happening to at least 1 in 6 couples across this country and more. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate all of the volunteer hours that you put in with this organization. Thank you. We love having you as part of our organization. And for all of you watching, I hope that you found some connection or some reassurance in hearing Vidya's story. And if at any time you want to reach out to us, we can add you to our online support groups. And we're going to be doing this TTC, Time to Chat, all about fertility with patient stories ongoing. So every week we're going to be talking to different patients with different stories and different family building journeys, and I'm very excited to be able to bring that to you all. So Vidya, thank you, and I'm sure
Thank
we'll be
you.
talking tomorrow.
Obviously.
Great long
Bye,
weekend,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks for
Bye.
spending time with us.